Hi, I'm Shae Russel from Fat Tail Media, and joining me today is Ross Beaty, Chair of Pan America at Equinox, and he's actually coming to you from a little island off near Vancouver called Bowen Island. Ross, thank you very much for your time today.
My pleasure.
Now, I would like to, I'm sure you don't need a lot of introduction to the Americans or the Canadians watching, but just humour for me a second while we introduce you to the Australian audience. To the Aussies, the best way to put it is you're a serial entrepreneur when it comes to setting up mining companies, and also it turns out a clean energy company. As we were going through a bit of your history, you've had 15 or 16 companies that you've created and then either moved on from or stayed on from a chair point of view or a consultant, haven't you?
Yep.
What drives somebody to continue to create that many companies in a fairly risky sector?
Well, I mean, it's just in you to do it, or it's not. It's a fun of sort of an impatience it's some sort of thing about what you're good at. I'm good at building companies. I'm not a carpenter or a auto mechanic. I'm pretty lousy in that stuff, but I'm good at building companies, and it's not something that you really know you've got until you do it. And you can only do it if you have success, because with your first company, if it's a flop, you really have a hard time starting another company. But I got very lucky in my early career, and I started a company called Equinox Resources back in mid '80s, actually, my very first company. And we found a gold mine, of all things. We found a big bloody gold mine in Nevada, and it attracted a big U.S. mining company to buy the company. And every single shareholder did well, because the last trading day was an all-time high in the stock. So everybody who started with me made money, and a lot of them. And I started 2 new companies the next day, because I was young and I was still kind of keen. I'd made a lot of mistakes. I learned a lot of things in the first company, and I started another company from scratch called Pan American Silver, and another little junior. And well, Pan American Silver has become a very big company now. It's over a $10 billion market cap company. It's the world's preeminent silver mining company. We have 11 mines in, I don't know, 5 or 6 or 7 countries now, I guess. It's a really big company, 12,000 employees, and it's a large cap, successful, well-known global mining company. And that still exists, and I'm still chair. I'm not executive chair of that. But along the way, I just couldn't help starting new companies if it looked like it was a good opportunity. It's just kind of what I do. I can only describe it like that. And because I was lucky in a lot of ways, I was lucky in both discovery, and I was lucky in timing, so that I was able to, for example, 6 of the companies were copper companies, which I started right at the bottom of the copper curve in 2002. And they were all sold by 2014 for, quite frankly, quite unconscionable amounts in 6 different deals. They were all sold at kind of the top of the market. So I got quite lucky in my timing of those. And I've started gold companies and, silver companies and stuff. And I've invested in a lot of other companies too. So it's been a great run, and I can't actually explain why. It's just sort of this manifest destiny. It just kind of happened. But I will say this, in 2017, at the end of 2017, I had just merged my clean energy company. I spent about 10 years building quite a big renewable energy company, which had quite large assets in hydropower, solar power, wind power, and so on. And I just sold it, or I merged it with a big Montreal-based company. And that meant I wasn't running that business anymore. That was my main business for about 10 years. So I felt, well, this is the end of 2017. I really love gold. I thought, maybe I'll just start one final company. I'm not a spring chicken anymore. And quite frankly, yeah, if you've started 15 or 16 companies, it's not exactly, it's kind of like, Elizabeth Taylor. How do you, when you're the 7th husband, how do you make things different? So I guess I felt I've got one company left in me. I love gold. I'm going to make it a gold mining company, a real producer. I'm going to try to build it fast and big. And then, you know what? That's it. So this is really probably my last company, Equinox Gold. We began at the very start of 2018. It's 2.5 years old now, and I can maybe tell you about it a little bit later. But so really, my run is at an end now. I'm like a dog whose day is done. I'm kind of, I'm not I don't have as much fire in me anymore, but I do have a huge amount of fire to build this final company into something great, like Pan American Silver, that will be an abiding, long-lasting mining company to irritate the world of gold investors for a long time after I'm gone. So it's a company that hopefully will live beyond my lifetime. So that's my kind of story in a nutshell.
I love that idea. All right, now you've got everything under your banner covered, from producers, developers, explorers, guys that aren't much more than a shovel out there. Before we start talking about some of your really exciting projects, what made you go looking for gold in the 1980s in the middle of a depressed gold market?
Yeah. Well, I didn't just look for gold. My very first company, God heavens, I started, I mean, believe it or not, I had a lithium exploration program in the mid 80s because I was sure lithium was going to, go bananas because of batteries. And I was about 30 years ahead of my time. I had lithium projects. I spent 4 years busting my pick looking for platinum and palladium in Canada. Found absolutely nothing. I mean, it was the most unsuccessful exploration hunt, I think, in the history of Canadian mining. Me and a lot of other players too. I mean, it was just a dog. It's a tough metal to look for. So, we looked for platinum. Palladium had properties all over Canada. I had gold assets, lithium, gallium, germanium, all kinds of strange metals. I looked for rare earth metals. It really didn't matter. I had a zinc mine. I built a zinc mine, and, that was a disaster twice, not once, but twice. So, there were a lot of dumb things I did, really dumb things. But the one thing that worked was this gold discovery, and most of our assets ended up being gold. We had a gold mine in California, we had another producing gold mine in Nevada, but making this big gold discovery in Nevada really is what set the stage for the sale of the company. The beautiful thing is when you sell a company, you just wash your hands of all the junk in it, all the problem projects, and you start fresh. So it was a really nice opportunity to do that. But having said all of that, gold is, I have to say right now, it is my favorite commodity, one I'm most bullish of, and one that is actually relatively easy to build a company around because gold is in so many places in the world in smallish deposits that allow you to build a producing base without a lot of capital. And there's so many examples in Australia as well of companies of people who have done this. It's something that an individual can do without, requiring the resources of a BHP Billiton, for example.
Yep. Okay, so you found this incredible deposit out in the 1980s, and you've continued to build and chase precious metals for basically the better part of your career. Yeah. Before we start talking about a couple of the other things, why are you so bullish on gold, and obviously to a lesser extent silver?
Yeah, so gold. I've gone through different metals, including uranium, which had its day, and I don't think it has any more potential, but that's a separate story. I really fell in love with gold in about 2014, 2015. I'm a big believer in cycles. We are a cyclical world. Metals run in cycles, investment markets run in cycles. It's a real thing. And in 2014, gold in 2015, gold had hit a kind of a bottom of about 1,050 per ounce. And I looked around and said, there's not a lot of people exploring. It's just one of those things that's when you want to be buying gold assets. And so I had been doing a lot of investment then. My main business was renewable energy, as I said. And so I thought, well, I'm going to start a little gold junior. Moving our copper team, we had a team called the Lumina Copper Group. And in 2014, we'd sold the last of the 6 companies we had. In fact, we sold it to First Quantum, so that's a bit of a nice Australian story. Some great guys in Perth, and it was just one. I just have the utmost regard for First Quantum from soup to nuts. I really think they're a great company, and fundamentally, they're an Australian success story, not anything else. So when First Quantum bought my last copper company, Lumina Copper, I had the team. I said, let's start a gold company. We went to Ecuador. Ecuador was an underexplored country. There was great opportunity there for good quality assets. And we ended up buying a deposit in Ecuador very cheaply. And we started a new public company, which was called Lumina Gold. And so Lumina Gold has spent that was 2015, I guess we really got going. And it's spent 5 years now doing all the usual stuff. It's been drilling like crazy. It's been de-risking the project through land acquisitions and doing a preliminary economic assessment and doing all the economics to show that this deposit is just fabulous and huge. And actually of of a size and scale that should be bought now by a major company. So Lumina Gold's gone for 5 years. We listed it in I think it was 2015, and it's fully developed now. Still very cheap for investors, but it's a real good story. So I'm answering your question about why gold.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get to that. So
that's fine.
Let's go back to 20. So what I did is I put my money where my mouth is. I didn't just talk about why I thought it was a great gold market in 2014, 2015, but I actually bought a lot of other juniors as an investor. Plus, I started Lumina Gold. And I did it because, as I said, I'm a strong believer in cycles. I looked at what was going on in the world. There's just a lot more money being printed. The US dollar was very strong. And gold, typically, when the dollar weakens, gold will have a run. I knew that. I looked at major markets. They were strong. Interest rates were coming down. There wasn't a lot of value in holding bonds. There was no great opportunity cost to hold gold. So there were a lot of reasons I thought that would stimulate a gold bull market. And sure enough, at the very beginning of 2016, the gold market took off, and it hasn't looked back. So gold went to about 1250 in 2016. Really nice little run. All my juniors did well. I sold most of them. I had N.I.T.R.I.C, I had Kamenak, I had a whole bunch of these big stories in Canada, luckily, and I got out of most of them through takeovers. So that left Lumina Gold, which was our development play that I was very active in, the largest shareholder, and all being run by this fabulous team from my old Lumina Copper days in Vancouver. So I was very close to it and really helping them with strategy, going down to Ecuador to work on these projects with them. And so I would say my thesis for holding gold was right. And it was right, including up until January. I mean, I was at an investment conference beginning of January called the Vancouver, whatever it's called, Vancouver Investment Conference. And I was, I was promoting gold as much as I would have been even in 2015, 2016. But it had a nice little run. So I mean, by January this year, gold had a good run. A lot of these companies had done pretty well. And I was confidently predicting gold would sail through its previous high of $1,900, and it would go to some higher number. It was a fairly low risk bet. And I had my gold plays. I had Equinox Gold. I had Lumina Gold. I had this spin out from Lumina called Luminex, which is a little junior that's also an Ecuador exploration play. Great value, also trades on the Toronto Stock Exchange. So I had these ways to play the gold price, and I had a bunch of other investments in other companies. So I was really long gold, and so far I had been shown to be right. My prediction about gold being right was on. Then of course along came COVID. Well, that's just pouring gasoline on a fire. I mean, talk about, like, by January I was sort of thinking gold was like in the fourth inning of a 9-inning ball game. I don't know what the cricket analogy is, but anyway.
I don't know cricket very well, so I can't even help you out there.
You probably know more than I do. So in any case, it was kind of, halfway done. And these are cycles. So ultimately they top out and then they go down for, unfortunately, horrible, dreadful 4 or 5 years. But we were halfway through. Well, now I'm much more bullish on gold. You're seeing it run very quickly right now. We're right in the throes of a very active bull market for gold. It's not going to go straight up. It'll have head fakes all over the place, but it's got a great future. Everything that's going on everywhere in the world, which is debasing the fundamental value of fiat currencies, is good for gold. Interest rates being flat or just slightly positive is good for gold. US dollar is starting to crack a little bit. That's good for gold. Major markets kind of being topsy and worries, that's good for gold. Global stress, global geopolitical uncertainty, it's good for gold. I mean, you've just got this fabulous macro environment that I have to say is as powerful for gold as I've seen in my entire career. And that's why I love gold. The thesis is intact, and I'm just having fun. It's a wonderful ride. It'll end someday, but for now, it's party time.
I really like that. Best macro environment you've seen for gold in your career. Now, my next question is probably more for the Australians watching, because Australia pretty much has almost every commodity you could want or need. So we don't really understand why more money doesn't come to us and start digging. And obviously there's some complicated reasons behind it.
Geography.
Geography. Well, that's leads me to my next point, which is what was so great about Ecuador? What drew you? Why did you take your Lumina team out there and go hunting for gold in Ecuador?
Right. Well, you know, a lot of this is risk and reward, and you know, you take the risk to get the reward, and immature environments like Ecuador have great potential, great geologic potential, but Ecuador had been in the penalty box for many years because it had a socialist, unfriendly, foreign investment unfriendly president who made it very difficult to explore, made it very expensive, froze concessions, did all kinds of terrible things. So it was in the penalty box and nobody went there. Well, that changed when he lost an election. Somebody else came in, and all of a sudden the situation changed, and then the gold market moved. So we scurried down to Ecuador. We had some contacts there, and we acquired a wonderful land position really early on. And with that great land position, we've established ourselves as one of the best landholders in the entire country. And I'll say there's analogies to, say, Peru, which was totally in the doghouse in the 80s and early 90s, because there was terrorism, there were assassinations, terrible, crazy, you know, socialist governments that were trying to steal everybody's money. It was just an awful place to work. And then in 1992, a visionary president named Alberto Fujimori came along, and Alberto Fujimori swept a broom through the Congress, the Senate, the Supreme Court, and he got rid of a whole bunch of corrupt people. He was able to beat the Shining Path, the guerrilla movement, and all of a sudden, Peru changed from being a pariah to being a wonderful place to explore and develop mines, by the way, which it is still to this day. 26 years later, it's still one of the best places on the planet to explore. So, you know, I might be wrong, but Ecuador was sort of like that back in 2015. And that's why we went there. Now, I'll also say, I went to Russia back in 1996, when it was, you know, in the haywire Wild West years after the fall of the Soviet Union, thinking exactly the same thing. And we acquired, for Pan American, we acquired the world's largest undeveloped, or second largest undeveloped silver deposit, which we then spent 40 million bucks on trying to build into a huge silver mine. And we were about a third of the way through construction, and we got ambushed by a bunch of corrupt Russians, and they stole the mine from us, and we had to retreat with our tail between our legs, and it was a complete debacle. So, you know, you don't always win when you do these things, but so far so good. I'm winning more than I'm losing.
Actually, let's talk about Pan America. How do you manage that sort of sovereign risk when you go into a country that has been traditionally closed to mining? How do you smooth out the road, so to speak, to allow investment in there and take the resources at the same time?
Yeah, well, like I said, it's all about risk and reward. And if you have a project that's a big enough reward potential, you're prepared to take the risk. And you can't be too clever about sovereign risk. You got to kind of hold your nose and cross your fingers and get lucky, really. And I got unlucky in Russia. That was a good example. It's the only place I've had my head handed to me. Terrible waste of 3 years of my life. But, you know, the reward potential was so great there. We had this incredible deposit, high grade, long life, everything you could want, low cost. So that was why I went there. And, you know, I'd probably do it again today. Even though Russia is basically a kleptocracy, there are one or two companies. Clive Johnson with Beaty, with BEMA did it. N.I.T.R.I.C is doing it. There's very, very few, but there have been some, very few, but some successes there. So my strategy really is not to be too clever about, you know, yes or no about political risk. Governments change, politicians change, crises come, and when crises come, typically they're more friendly to mining, and then when they get all fat and lazy, they start penalizing mining and high taxes and royalties and all kinds of stuff. So that's just the way it goes. But the answer to me is diversification. If you're diversified, if you've got, you know, Pan American now has, I think, six or seven countries where we have 11 mines. So one day, you know, Argentina might be a mess and Peru is going to save us, and the next day it's actually not Peru, it's Mexico or maybe Guatemala or somewhere like that. So really it's diversification and then of course relying on lady luck.
All right, can we talk about Pan America and what's happening, in particular with the silver deposits out in South America? What are you guys looking for? How's the progress going? And what's the growth story out here?
Well, Pan American, you have to, I mean, it's a large cap company. Like I said, it's a $10.5 billion company. It's got, you know, it's got fabulous cash flow, great earnings, great liquidity. We trade between $60 and $100 million of stock a day on the NASDAQ and Toronto Stock Exchange. And it's just got everything an investor wants for a safe, stable, you know, high beta company. We've actually tripled in the last 2 years because we're considered as one of the best ways for investors to play silver. And a lot of people love silver. So we have all these operations, both silver and gold. We produced 28 million ounces of silver, I think, this year, and we've got about 600,000 ounces of gold. So a fairly good-sized gold production base. But we have these three huge deposits that are also option value plays for us that aren't in production right now. We've got one in Guatemala that could produce 22 or so million ounces a year for a long life, and it's already built. We just have to get a government permit in Guatemala. We've got another one just like that in Argentina, could produce 16 to 20 million ounces a year, and it's ready to go as soon as we get a permit. And we've got a massive discovery we made last year, about a year and a half ago in Mexico. That could be one of the world's largest, not just silver, but silver, lead, zinc deposits. It's a giant thing. And those three are what you would call optionality value. And so, you know, investors are buying with a $50 per share. They get all of the producing assets that they're paying for, and they get all these huge option plays basically for free. And that gives a real nice potential kicker to the story if silver trades flat and we get the permits, or if silver, of course, goes up, or even if gold goes up and silver stays flat. We've got all these upsides, and in the meantime, very, very limited downside because the company is so well run and is such a solid financial base. And I mean, I just can't see anything particularly going wrong. Even in COVID times, we kept most of the mines. Well, most of the mines are all running now, and we're making money hand over fist.
Actually, I will just touch on COVID. Obviously, it's impacted mines around the world. You know, you guys were able to mitigate that risk and keep your mines open and running, or were you impacted and you had to close some?
Yeah, it's a tale of two cities, really. Equinox Gold has 6 mines now. It has 6 mines, 4 in Brazil, 1 in Mexico, and 1 in California. And they're about one third in terms of their value. And they all stayed running, believe it or not. We had to shut the Mexican mine down a little bit, not fully, but to some degree, but the others all ran. So Equinox Gold actually just kind of kept going, even though we had a huge asset base in Brazil, which has been slammed by the COVID crisis. Mines are all running. And California, same thing. They said, you know, mining is essential, keep it going, and we did. Pan American, on the other hand, had 11 mines. We were shut down in Mexico, we were shut down in Peru, we were shut down in Bolivia, and we were shut down in Argentina. But we have 2 mines in Ontario which continue to run. I mean, go figure. So we had 2 mines out of 11 running, and yet our share price has gone up and up and up and up and up. And it just defies logic. We are back in production at all mines now, though. So everything's back, for better or for worse. Oh no, sorry, it's not all back. We were back until just what is today? Wednesday, right? Or Thursday in Australia.
Yep.
Thursday? Hold on, I'm getting confused. No, it's Thursday.
Friday, it's Friday in Australia.
Friday in Australia. Thank you. That was the fact check. We both failed. We were running all 11 of our mines until Sunday, and on Sunday in Peru, we have 4 mines there. 2 of our mines had new COVID cases to the point that we decided, you know what? Let's just do the right thing. Shut them down. Get through this period. Stem the potential passing of the COVID virus. And let's get everybody go home, 14 days, and we'll see what happens. So we've got 9 out of 11 mines running now.
That's pretty good. A lot of people were harder hit than that.
Yeah,
that's really good that you're.
Yeah.
You know what it means too. If you've got companies that can avoid the worst by closing down, it basically tells you these things are really well run and that you can minimize that risk to staff and shareholders at the same time. Now that was a little bit of a tangent. I'm sorry because I wanted to just briefly touch on a bull market in silver. I mean, silver's had a bit of a rally this year. It's lagged behind. It's hit $22 US dollars. I mean, we're talking about 3 different currencies in this conversation. Do you see any further upside for silver at the moment?
Well, you know, silver is this sort of schizophrenic metal. It doesn't really know whether it's a precious metal or a base metal. And the thing about silver, to understand the silver price, you have to look at both the market for precious metals, which is money, or gold, let's say, which is very robust right now. And silver is going to follow along with that. So say half of the silver equation is investment demand. And if there's strong investment, and believe me, silver is going to go up. But then you have to look at what the market is for industrial production, and thus the pull of fundamental industrial demand, because silver is one of those industrial metals that just is used in everything. It's used in every digital product. the biggest use of silver now is actually clean energy. It's photovoltaic cells. It uses 10% of the world's silver demand is in one of those, is just one use. It's just incredible. So it's got thousands and thousands of different uses. So if you want to understand half of the silver demand equation, you've got to look at what the world is doing on industrial production. And that's a much more complicated exercise today. We've had a complete collapse in the first quarter of, or going through to say the end of April, complete collapse in industrial metal use from industrial production. But then, you know, we had a nice little recovery, but it's still not what it was. And the big question is, where's it going to be? What is driving silver today? It's had a wonderful run in the last week or so, wonderful run. What's driving it today is clearly investment demand. People are thinking silver's got a great opportunity to actually outperform gold, and it will outperform gold if both the gold price fundamentals are good and the industrial metal fundamentals are good. It will. It'll be the one on steroids. It's always the one that goes up. It has the greatest, you know, beta. It has the greatest volatility of all precious metals, because it's a relatively thinly traded metal compared to gold. It has about 1/50th of the trading volume of gold. So silver is more volatile. If we have synchronous good precious metal markets, investment demand, specifically looking at silver as money, which of course it is, as well as industrial production pickup this fall, juiced by all the stimulus that's coming in, you're going to see silver do extremely well. It's probably going to outperform gold, as I said. On the other hand, if we have a meltdown again, a second wave, a decline in industrial production for any manner of reasons this fall, you know, I don't think you're going to see silver do as well as gold. But it's got pretty good fundamentals, and I would say it should do pretty well, maybe fabulously.
Now, my final question brings me to your clean energy company, which is Energex. So I guess it's a two-part question here. How does a mining guy end up in a clean energy company? Because the two don't traditionally have a strong relationship. And was it because of the rising demand of silver required for clean energy products?
No, it wasn't. It was, you know, I'd had this great run in the copper game and the gold game and the silver game until about 2008. At the end of the day, I'm also a very committed environmentalist. I believe in the protection of the environment, conservation of biodiversity in a very fundamental way. So I was done with, I'd had all these companies. I was sort of done for a while, and I thought, well, I'm going to start another operating company. And I decided instead of a mining company, it would be a clean energy company, so that I could actually do something instead of just talk about it, about this problem we have of, you know, CO2 in the air, warming up the environment, warming up the air, buggering up the ocean, acidifying it, and just screwing up our environment with all manner of consequences for not just people, but also the natural world. So I just thought, well, there's something I can do and also make a buck at, also make investors money. And I put all my assets in that company into a foundation, an environmental foundation. So I got this triple kind of win. I win for the world, I win for my shareholders, and I win for my foundation, which all goes back to protecting the environment. So it was a segue in a way, but I started with geothermal power, Shane, and it was, you know, geothermal electricity comes from the earth. You need to drill holes to get it. It's a resource thing. It's in hard rocks, like I'm used to in the mining game. So it wasn't that different. And it's all about, you know, discovery and development and financing and construction and operation and permitting. Like, it's the same kind of path as you see in a gold mine or a zinc mine. And I knew all about that pretty well. And it's all about Latin America. There's a lot of geothermal power potential there. So I did that. And then I found geothermal power was a pretty tough business, a very, very risky business, and very limited upside. It didn't have the beautiful runs that say metals have. So I went into wind and hydro and solar after that, and it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. So, you know, so I'm sort of still involved in it, but not directly. I'm really putting most of my effort in the precious metals game right now.
Look, Ross, I would like to say thank you very much for your time. I'd like to think you've given yourself a great introduction to the Australian audience. I know a lot of Americans, Canadians know you well. You've got some incredible projects. There's definitely, you know, you've got Equinox Gold, Lumina Resources, people need to keep their eyes on.
Lumina Gold.
Lumina Gold. I'm sorry, I've written down Lumina Resources. My apologies. That's real bad form on my
Not
part.
bad, not bad. No, there is a Luminex Resources as well as a Lumina Gold. We have both.
Okay,
Both good.
I've clearly taken both those companies and went, oh, all right, we'll just swoosh them together. There you go. I've given you the name of your third company, your 17th company. Look, thank you for your time. Thank you for helping me through my gaffe. I appreciate you joining me today.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.